So it gives me a lot of pleasure to welcome Roger to be with us today, or Commander Deakins, as I should say, perhaps.
Stop that.
Well, he noticed it this morning.
I haven't been to Getty yet, so it doesn't count.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, okay.
No, I'm here, so I couldn't.
Oh, right. Watching Jesse James again on the big screen, which I haven't seen for quite a while. There's obviously a lot of detail in that film, and I thought we would. I've got a little clip, a little part of it that I just want to drop us into. It is a striking sequence, and for a lot of different reasons. But I thought, Roger, if you could talk us through, the construction of that and and some of the thinking behind it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Andrew had a very clear. Well, let me start with the book. Really, I mean, the book is very like the script. It's very like the film. It's this kind of very lyrical retelling of history, and very detailed, and that's what Andrew really wanted from the script and the feel of the movie. He wanted one point to feel the history, but also wanted to feel the characters as real characters. So we spent quite a lot of time in prep, actually. We spent a lot of time. I mean, usually when you haven't worked with a director before, it's nice to have more prep time than you would if you've worked with somebody previously. And I had a lot of time with Andrew, and he's very, very meticulous and had very, very clear ideas in his head about the feel he wanted of things, even if he didn't necessarily have the sort of total sense of the visuals for it, So that scene, some of it we storyboarded, and that scene in particular, we did very detailed storyboards of that. I mean, it started off, it was like 4 times as long as it always does, and then you find you've got 2 nights to shoot it, so it kind of whittles down, But we prepped that a lot. I prepped it very detail.
When you are working with a new director like Andrew, and how much time did you spend? How much pre-production or time did you have with him because there's so much detail in the construction of the history of that era too.
Yeah.
Learning about the Civil or the post-Civil War era. Yeah. There's a lot of sort of, in a way, echoes of Ken Burns' Civil War documentary series
very
in
much,
there.
Yeah.
Did you talk a lot about that in the period?
We did quite a bit of research, or he did, and people did quite a lot of research for us, so we had a lot of research material. But the book, Ron Hanson's book, is very, very detailed in its telling of the whole period and all the characters in the film. I mean, the film, actually, the first cut of the film was 4 hours, and I thought it was a better version than this, and it had to be cut down, obviously. It was a studio film, but it followed each of those characters in quite detail, what happened in their lives. Okay. And I found that was such an important aspect of the film. It was a piece of history, as well as a story about fame and,
yes,
all the rest of it.
Yes, yeah. How did Andrew convey some of those ideas?
Basically, we, spent days in an office just going through ideas, and with a storyboard artist with us, and just gradually developed the scenes, and he had very strong ideas about certain shots, like the tracking shot with the sparks coming off the wheel and the robbers in their hoods in the darkness. He had very specific shots, and the shot where the train's coming towards us, we're tracking back, and then the camera sort of locks onto the train and keeps going. But so you a lot of things we had to work out.
It's a great shot actually, because the first one I saw, it's such a shock, like...
Yeah, it was funny, because you're thinking, well, how the hell do you do a shot like that? And then I thought, well, I talked to Rick the Grip and said, well, couldn't we just use a bit of foam on a flat car? And he said, oh yeah, I suppose we could. So we just put the camera was handheld on the flat car with a piece of foam in front of it,
right,
and the train came into it, and we just kept going.
Yeah.
The hardest thing was to get the light on the front of the train, because you didn't want to see it. You just wanted to see the light, which was a bit of a stretch, because it was actually a 5K tungsten par, which had just been invented then, but hadn't been invented at the time of the movie, obviously, so that was a bit of a stretch. But the idea was that you just have this light, and as it gets closer, there's just a bit of detail reveals the front of the train. So all we did was just put a piece of poly in the back, somebody handheld above the camera, and just sort of created that little bit of detail in the train. So.
That great moment where all of you are sitting on the flat car waiting for the train to smash into you.
Yeah, well, we shot the rehearsal and it worked, so there we were, we didn't have time to do a lot. We were very lucky shooting it. So much of what you do is luck. I was lucky we had exactly the right night, so that the smoke, the little bit of atmosphere we put in the air just hung in there like perfectly, like you don't get that often, do you? That was perfect, and the way the steam came round Brad, that just worked perfectly, and what else on that? One thing about this scene was kind of interesting. I shouldn't say it because the producer's here that I'm working with at the moment, but it's very dark, right? But you kind of think, well, how far can I take it? I did actually have a couple of cranes there with some lights on it, and just before we shot the first shot of the train coming, I turned it off. Somebody asked what were they for, and I just said they were work lights, but really.
Right.
Yeah, that was for Clayton. But you do that because you think, well, it might not work. You don't know. I've never done that before, and I was thinking, well, maybe I want to see some detail in the trees before the train comes, and then the atmosphere just hung in, and we practiced one run with the train and the light, and I had to dim the light as it came forward so it didn't completely flare the lens.
Yes.
And I just thought, well, I don't need anything else. That was it. You know what I mean? So there's an enormous amount of luck, isn't there, when you do these things?
Absolutely. So you have those hurricane lamps and the train headlight, and that's sort of...
That was it. The hurricane lamps were all dummied with little FEB, they were like a 250 watt little, like an inky bulb. So most of them were dummied. Unless we were looking at them really closely, I put bulbs in them.
Yeah.
So in the train, the interior of the train, I think Marty, the gaffer, said there was like 2.5 miles of cable in there, because all the oil lamps were all, they're all electrocuted.
Yeah. That's a big wiring job.
It was, yeah, but there was a sort of thing where you do that, but then you can shoot really quickly because everything's on dimmers. You can, the camera was steady coming down the train as it passed the lamp could come up a little bit to just give a little bit more light, stuff like that. So it makes it much, more efficient to shoot when you do
Absolutely. That. A lot of things are like that, where you put in a lot of preparation so that when you're actually there, you can just do it.
Yeah, because the exterior was just 2 nights' work, with Brad looking at the rail and everything else, and which wasn't a lot really,
No.
The boxcar, inside the boxcar, the mail car, that was tented, so we shot that during the day and then went on to do the night work as it got dark.
The other 2 really strong visual elements in that is obviously the vignettes around all the voiceover moments. And then the use of distorted window panes through the show.
Yeah.
Can you tell us
the distorted window panes? It's just we had period glass, and it was just something that kind of evolved with the production designer, and we kind of got this glass, and that was just a bonus of the fact, you know. And a lot of the night lighting, I found that if I use a hard light going through it, I could get those wonderful sort of like Gothic patterns on the wall, you know, sort of. But the vignetting of the lens, we did a lot of testing for that actually. I had years ago I'd done a keyhole effect with an old front element of a stills lens, and I'd shot through this stills lens and just played with it to get a sort of keyhole effect, somebody looking through a keyhole in the door. And so I remembered that, so I asked Otto Nemitz, guys at Otto Nemitz, to play around with something like that for us, and they eventually produced two different lenses with these sort of old front elements stuck on the front to get that. And then they found that there was an old Kinoptic wide angle, I think it was, that they actually took the front element off it, and it ended up being kind of a wonderful effect just by itself without the front element.
Oh, okay.
It was kind of interesting.
Right.
So now there's a set of lenses they rent out called the Deakinizers, so you can, they do it for commercials. Right. I don't know if I like it or not. I suppose I should be flattered.
Are you getting a percentage or?
No, I'm not. Yeah, that's a bit much, really.
Because the distorted glass thing is, what's great about that is that when you come on the outside of the buildings to look in at Jesse, at Brad, you can sort of see another side to him completely. And there's the two moments where that happens, and they're big revelatory kind of, oh, right, okay, we're seeing deeper into the man, and he's showing us something that no one else can see. And I think that's a really important, the layering of what can you see now. And now we're going to show you a bit more, all the way through the film. You're thinking about those layers inside him and Robert Ford, well, and everyone else around him. But
it's interesting because I mean that wasn't storyboard. It was just something that evolved as we figured how can we get, because we wanted that idea. We wanted that idea of, his reflecting on his life and not being what he seems to other people, in that interior kind of world and that kind of feeling of sort of ghostly thing. So we were just looking around and we started playing with that glass, and it just sort of evolved, that's what we could do. Yeah.
Well, it works extremely well.
It was a film where, during production, we would sort of see things and shoot shots and say, well, that might really work for this montage or whatever. So we would shoot shots that we just felt meant something to us in some way that we felt could be used, so they weren't shot necessarily specifically for where they are. Okay. It's quite a bit of that, really.
So the editor and Andrew could sort of navigate that afterwards.
Yeah, a lot of the landscapes and the time lapse and stuff. I mean, they were done knowing we'd use them, but we didn't know where they would be. The only sequence that we storyboarded in that way was the opening sequence, which introduces Jesse and the idea of his granulated eyes and stuff. That whole opening kind of montage was storyboarded, so we shot that in pre-production. In fact, that was a very specific thing that we wanted to spend time on, so we spent it in pre-production because it was just Brad and it didn't involve complicated stuff. So
did you have to do that over a couple of dusks, or were you able to do it in one go?
I think we did that in one go, actually. Yeah, it was one go. Yeah. Yeah. Again, a lot of it was just made up. The spider was in the cornfield, and I said, well, it'd be great, let's have the spider in the foreground. Brad was smoking a cigar in the background, and we just, you find shots, that somehow seem to resonate with what you're doing, really,
The colour palette in that film seems to be very tightly controlled, and tones of brown, tones of grey, tones of cream, really, or off-white. Was there a lot of conversations with you and the designer about keeping that palette quite narrow? Yeah, we did a lot of prep, and I did quite a lot of testing for it as well. Andrew originally wanted to do it, the whole thing as a flash the negative for the whole thing. But it just seemed the idea of flashing the whole negative was a bit kind of risky, but also, a bit risky and also very expensive, frankly. So we knew we were doing a DI, so what we ended up doing eventually was a kind of combination of a skip bleach on the negative and then a kind of flashing effect in the DI,
I've done a lot of tests where we flashed the negative with a red light, just to give that sort of that color, overall color. So it was just we tried to emulate that in the DI because we couldn't really do it photochemically over the whole movie. You know, I think we might have done 1 or 2 scenes like that. It's a technique I've done in Beautiful Mind, actually. So it was something that we.
Okay, and what does it just push the skin tones up a little bit?
It makes you get a red in all the shadows. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And the amount of bleach bypass or skip.
Skip bleach. Yeah.
Did you regulate that?
Bypass. Yeah. It says the skip bleach, where you can basically do it. I think it's like 20% or 50% or something. So it was just a minimal amount of skip bleach. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, flashing, you can do any colour you want, really. But just people over the years have only really done it with a white light. And we thought, well, you can do it with any colour, so we started doing it with an orange light.
Yeah, there used to be the Panaflasher.
Yeah,
you put on the front of it.
I don't know. I've never used Panaflex, but I'm an Arri man, I'm afraid.
Lightflex, yeah. Thank you. Where you dial up the colour.
Lightflex, yeah, that was popular for a while.
Jerry
wasn't it?
Turns.
Yeah, Jerry. I knew Jerry. Yeah. But it was like a huge thing, wasn't it? It's like, go handheld with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there ever a discussion about whether to do Jesse in anamorphic?
I don't think there was, really. I mean, I have to admit, I've never shot a film in anamorphic, but I quite like spherical. I like the sort of the closeness to the subjects and,
it's just westerns quite often go that way. And
I don't think we ever really discussed it. I mean, maybe we might early on, maybe, but.
I was wondering whether you'd shot anamorphic, and I hadn't done the research to go.
No,
Is that been a choice, or just the way things have worked out?
No, just a bit of a choice, really. I say I like being close to characters and stuff. I'm not sure. I don't quite like the anamorphic. There's a couple of films over the years I was going to shoot on anamorphic, but they didn't actually happen, so I've never done that.
Right. Is there any questions about Jesse James before we? Anybody has anything specific to ask?
No, good. Moving on.
Yes, just the very remote locations, Roger. The rushes turn around, and what did you communally view them, or did you embrace a bit of new digital technology? Was the rushes a long wait?
I think the rushes were being done in Montreal, so it wasn't. We were in Calgary and Edmonton, so it wasn't too long. I can't remember how we watched them, actually. I think we watched them on a Lock Pro, didn't we? Yeah, you're right, yeah.
What's that?
It's like a flatbed table viewing system, isn't it? Yeah, you've got a small screen, but it's not like...
And they're work print or...
yeah, we watched dailies, print dailies, didn't we? Yeah, it was print. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We haven't seen print dailies for a long time.
No, I know. Well, yeah. Seen negative for a while, actually.
Yeah.
But, you look at it and think, film's coming. This was Blu-ray and it looked quite good, didn't it? Film looks nice, doesn't it?
Okay, well, I'm going to show a little clip from a documentary Roger worked on in the 70s, just to really take us back to where Roger began. It's a documentary called Blue Suede Shoes. I've sort of sprung this on Roger, so...
Which is kind of weird, because it never got released, actually. I have no memory of that.
I had a feeling it was.
We shot Bill Haley and the Comets, I think.
Yes.
And that's right. I remember them and a Matchbox or something, or some...
There's a train journey where Bill Haley comes into London by train after. Look, the only reason I show that is that it's a fun documentary. You can watch it the whole thing's on YouTube. But Roger's, I'll paraphrase it slightly, is that you started shooting documentary after you left the National Film School for 6 or 7 years before you moved into drama, and there were many documentaries around the world. Whitbread Yacht Race, which Roger was crew and shooting, the Van Morrison and Ireland, and Blue Suede Shoes, and feature lengths. Most of the feature length documentaries are 1 hour.
Well, these were done for cinema, but I did mostly work for television. I did things other people didn't want to do, like nobody wanted to sail around the world, but I thought that sounded pretty cool. And then I went to Rhodesia during the war, filmed the war in Rhodesia, and to Eritrea during the war there, and a few different places. People didn't want to do it, so I did.
Yeah, that's how you make a start, isn't it?
It is, actually, yeah. But that was, most memorable experiences in my life in many ways, because it really teaches you a lot, Yeah, I don't regret doing it at all. It was quite a wonderful part of my life. Yeah.
I noticed that 2 of those documentaries were with Michael Radcliffe. And
Michael Radford,
Radford, sorry. Yeah. And I think looking at the times that you met at film school, he was a year older.
He was at the film school, yeah. We talked now and again, but we didn't really know each other that well. But when I left, he asked me to shoot some documentary work with him, and then we ended up doing this film about Van Morrison, who went back to Ireland for the first time for 10 or 15 years, I think. We followed him around Belfast and Dublin. It was quite an experience. And as I idolised Van Morrison, it was pretty good, really. And then, and then when Mike moved on to do a feature film, he'd seen I did a TV series called Walcott about a policeman in London, and he thought then that was enough for me to shoot his feature. I had enough experience, and he could sell me as a cinematographer on his feature. So that was basically the first feature I did. Really was with Mike, and then we did 3. We did. That was called Another Time, Another Place, which was made for Channel 4, and then that did really well at the Cannes Film Festival. And a producer came up to Mike and said, "Well, what do you want to do next?" And Mike didn't really have anything on the cards. They didn't know what to do, but he'd always wanted to make a film of 1984. George Orwell's 1984. So he said to me, he said, "I just blurted out 1984," and the guy said, "Well, okay." so then we were shooting 1984. It was like bizarre, how lucky can you get?
Yeah, totally. And can you tell us a little bit about that, developing because it has a very distinctive look for 1984.
Yeah, we wanted to shoot it black and white, but they wouldn't let us. So the lab sort of developed this bleach bypass process that hadn't been used before, but I think a lab in Italy had experimented with it. Right. And Keizu Miyagawa had used some similar technique in Japan that he called silver tint or something, and I think it must have been a bleach bypass process. But this is something that Kay's lab in London made up for us, and you could only do it on the print, basically do a bleach bypass on the print, which created, like a 50% sort of black and white look, really, by keeping the silver, the silver in the print. So it was quite good, really. We just nailed it down, or the lab nailed it down about a week before we started shooting, really. So that was
it's funny how those tests end up being so close to the. You just get it, and we're going now.
It was good because we watched all our dailies with the bleach bypass on it. So It was kind of, we could see.
Oh,
how
they
it was going.
bleach bypassed the work print for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that didn't get it is nowadays when they make a DVD or a Blu-ray copy, they don't do it because the the negative, not bleach bypass, always all the IP.
Okay.
Obviously, they go off that. So I've seen a copy of it that is kind of full colour, and it's like really disturbing. What can you do?
I just read this as a story. Richard Burton it was his last film, and
Yeah, it was basically his last film.
and you were nervous of him, and he was nervous of you guys, apparently.
That was really, it was really interesting because, what was I? I was like 30 probably. We were all really young, and this is this movie icon, and we were really nervous. I certainly were. And after the first day shooting, it's like we're thinking, the AD on the second day, I think it was, the AD came around and said, Mr. Burton would like to talk to everybody at the end of the day. We have to go and we congregate outside his trailer. His trailer was a little caravan, actually. It was really kind of nice. You look at the trailers these days. He had tiny little, Anyway, so the whole crew stood around the trailer at the end of the day, and Richard comes out. He said, "I'd just like to thank you for one of the most wonderful days filming I've ever had." He said, when I came out on the set and I saw these young, fresh faces, I was absolutely so nervous, but you made me feel so comfortable and so welcomed. I just wanted to thank you. We all, wow. I mean, that was really classy, I thought. That was really classy.
Yeah.
And we used to spend lunchtime sitting around, and he'd tell stories about his life and loves and everything. It was really good. Really nice guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, to have lunch with Richard Burton for
Yeah,
7
no,
weeks.
it's fantastic. We'd sit on a hill in outside Swindon when we were doing that sequence, the Golden Country, the kind of dream sequences, and then we'd just sit there at lunchtime and chat away about everything. And yeah, it was great. You're a lovely guy. Yeah.
When you get a new script, because I'm sure you get offered lots of scripts, and
Surprisingly, not that many. I mean, the thing about working, I'm sure people would say, we work in the business. It's like people have their own teams, So I work with certain people. I don't often get that many film scripts from other people because they've got their own teams. That's the way it is.
Well, maybe then we should talk about the Coen brothers and that, because that's a team that it's been going for 20 years, and
it's been kind of a while. I mean, I've missed the last one, so I hope I get to work with them again. It's a bit
Well, certainly, some of the most memorable films, I could rattle off 4 or 5 obvious ones. But I do have a clip from No Country for Old Men, which I think's just worth showing. We can talk a bit about that. I love that whole movie, but this.
I love the scene that comes up. Actually, the scene that follows, I think, is one of my favourite scenes of all time.
Oh, if only I'd known that.
No. It's just I love the dialogue and the sense of time passing and these two elderly people trying to come to terms with the way the world changes, like we all do.
Yeah. Well, there's so much going on in that scene, and
most of it is Tommy's face, isn't it? I mean, how can you go wrong? You know.
well, I like. It's just he's in the car.
Yeah.
He goes. He braces himself, and then he goes to get out, and then he pauses slightly, and then he goes.
Yeah.
You know, and there's sense of anticipation in that. I mean, did you operate that film?
I always do operate.
You always operate. But how much communication is there between you and Tommy?
Quite a lot. There's actually, it was quite a lot. I mean, the brothers, are very specific in their shots. You know, everything's storyboarded for a start. So we go in with a kind of known quantity of what we have to do. But on top of that, you can change things. You know, I kind of really I love working with them because you have this game plan, but you can throw it in the air and chuck it away and do what you want. And there was one scene where, in particular, I was thinking where it's just before the scene you showed actually, where he's talking to the other sheriff in the coffee bar, and they're talking about signs and wonders and all that, and they come out in the parking lot, and the other sheriff gets in the car, and Tommy's talking to him outside the car, and that was storyboarded to be like, 10 or 12 setups, and it was late. We had to have an early start the next day, and there was a storm coming in, so we had very little time to shoot it. And I said to Joel and Ethan, I said, well, why we did? I just love the location. It's just like these lights, and I could play in silhouette, leaning in the car, and you don't have to see the other guy and all this, and you just end with Tommy's close-up at the end before you cut to this scene, and Joel said, Tommy's in closer, right? I said, yeah. He said, yeah, well, you talk to him. So I went to talk to Tommy. I said, well, this is what we're thinking of doing, So, okay, just tell me where. And it was fine, but because I've worked with him before, so, it was okay, but it was funny, Joel.
So it was their first
Joel
time.
saying, okay, you explain what you want from Tommy.
Yeah, well...
Tommy was fantastic. I mean, he's a brilliant actor. And in that part, the last scene in the kitchen, it's just fantastic, isn't it? He's great.
Yeah.
Great.
And the thing that it's funny, I hadn't thought about it quite as closely as this until again I started. It's funny, the internet. You start to follow a trail. The close-ups through the lock that's been blown out, and the reflections of Tommy and then Javier on the other side. And talk us through the storytelling in that. It's quite a big... I was never sure until I read another bit that, where is Anton when you go into that?
Well, that's the thing, you're not sure. Was he really there?
Yeah.
The whole thing in the story, is he just... is he evil, or does he actually exist as a character? It's this whole, I don't know, it's a little nebulous. And that was the idea. We talked about it. It was like, did he get away through the bathroom window? But the guy said it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter if he's there or he isn't there. It's just the sense of this evil. He could have been, he was, because the thing's open, but, so...
Yeah, I know. The first time I saw it, I didn't notice. The second time I noticed
any more than Joel and Ethan would. You asked Joel and Ethan, like, well, I don't know. Some things just sort of feel right, It's like, you can't explain why you do a shot, why you frame something a certain way. It just feels right, and you kind of discuss a film with a director or a scene with a director and see the actors do it. And something sort of just clicks. You just feel that feels right for that moment, and I do it one way, and somebody else will do it another way. That's sort of personal connection with your subject, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. Maybe I could ask you on that film, and also it's something I read that someone in the art department talked about your use of practicals, and And in a way, practicals is where, you know, both cinematography and the art department both have their hands on the same, you know, tool, if you like, or the same prop. You know, we both want to have an input into that. And I've read that you're pretty, you know, meticulous about or picky, yes, you know, about the pracs and the way they, you know, are used.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's it's just, I mean, how a set's going to look. I suppose because I come from a naturalistic sort of point of view, you know, in documentaries and stuff, then, you know, if the practical is going to dictate how the room's lit. I mean, there's a scene in No Country as well where Sugar is in the motel room having, you know, shot up the bad guys, the Mexicans, and he's sitting on the bed and the lamp's fallen over and it's casting this sort of hard light on him and the wall behind him.
Yes.
You know, I mean, that's a simple example of where you want a very specific look. So if you didn't have the right practical, it wouldn't create that, you know. So I, you know, quite not extended, but I mean, it was you know, a detailed conversation about what the interior of that motel room should look like and how do we justify having a light, you know, a bedside table light rather than just the wall lights that were there as well, you know, so that this lamp could fall over and we could get this effect.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's you know, it's give and take. You know, it's a collaboration really to get that. I mean, in the train, you know, in the sequence in the train in Jesse James, again, if they, you know, I mean, I suppose it was more likely they had lights with little shades on, you know, on the walls instead of those globes.
Yes.
That wouldn't have suited me. And then the other lights were the hanging lights. And I had them make these like china hats, you know, like tin shades for the oil lamps that were hanging, because I wanted to put bulbs inside the shade. If you look at the way like the interior of the mail car was lit, there's this thing hanging there, and you look and see the flame of the oil lamp, but the shadow of the tin shade is actually level with where the tin shade was. But if it was being lit by the oil lamp, it would be up there, wouldn't it?
Yes.
But in the shade, there's three little like 150 bulbs wired in on a dimmer, so it's lighting it, but it's actually, you know, it looks naturalistic when you think about it. It's not.
Yeah.
But I mean, I had to get that made because that's the sort of the idea I had for light in the scene. You know.
Cheating.
Cheating. Yeah. Well, it's all cheating, isn't it? Yeah.
So what I might do now, because I might open it up to the floor, because I mean, I can keep going, but I think we'd all like to ask questions. And who has a question?
I've got one. Roger, in Jesse James, was the nearly complete lack of artificial backlight in the film in consideration of your focus puller's workload in not having to cut the light out of his lens all the time, or something else?
Andy's here actually. He's got enough work to do without backlight. No, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I never really figured backlight. It's funny you showed that clip from that film. What was it called? That documentary.
Oh yes. Blue Suede Shoes.
Blue Suede Shoes. Sorry, I forgot from that. We were shooting one of those concerts, right? And it was one of the first things I'd done. I'd done like a few industrial documentaries and stuff. But I was in this quite big concert with 9 other cameramen. And I was setting up the lighting and talking with them where they should shoot this concert from. And then I got a call to go to the producer's office. And the producer said, you know, all the other cameramen have come to me and said they don't understand, there's no backlight. And I said to her, well, what do you mean they said there's no backlight? Well, they don't understand how you can shoot it, there's no backlight. I said, well, there's no backlight because I don't want any backlight. And I kind of walked off and I couldn't understand what it was about. So I guess that's my... I'm not a big fan of backlight.
But you're a big fan of the silhouette though.
Yeah, I love silhouette. I love lighting, you know. I mean, I use backlight if there's a justification with backlight, but I wouldn't just use backlight to separate In fact, I kind of like when things don't separate. You know,
David, turn that backlight off.
well, I like separation because, you know, like, I mean, the scene of Tommy sitting on the bed in No Country there, you know, he's dark, there's light there, you know, and then when he leans forward into the light, he's got dark behind. You know, it's like playing that light dark all the time rather than using backlight, you know. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, Roger, I'm going to take it in a slightly different direction. Wondering if you could talk a bit about your work with Pixar and DreamWorks.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I had a lot of fun doing that. You know, I got asked originally to go and do a seminar at Pixar, and I had kind of fun, and I guess they did, because then they asked me to sort of to be involved with Wall-E, and I spent a couple of months, and I would go up there now and again and just discuss lighting and camera setups with them, and we did a sort of concept thing of the whole film. We did some shots that were sort of representative of the look of the film. I mean, on that film, I suppose I did more on the first 20 minutes, you know, on Trashed Earth on Wall-E. I did a bit on that. And then because I'd done that, Gore Verbinski asked me to be involved in Rango. So I spent more time on Rango, actually. I spent a lot of time getting the look of the picture, and again, I would go up to ILM, who did the film, and I would spend, you know, a couple of days every other week up with them. Again, kind of creating test shots and playing with lighting styles and just getting the look of the film, and then they would send me. I would be connected with them. I was off shooting, I think, True Grit or something, and I was getting, you know, images for them all the time that I could put into Photoshop and put my notes on and play with and send back to them. So that's how I work with them. And now I've been working with DreamWorks on a few films. So I enjoy it. It's the same, you know. It's obviously it's different. It's less personal because it's like a huge number of people involved in the process. But I like playing with images and shots, and yeah, it's different, but it's still interesting. Yeah.
Next. Boris up the back.
I just had a question about working with actors. I recently rewatched Doubt, which is a great film, and had really great performances, but at the same time, visually was just awesome and beautiful. And I guess the question is, how do you balance what you need the actors to do for you on a mechanical level versus just staying out of their way so, you know, they can just interact and the scene can be real? And I guess concentrating on that great scene where Meryl Streep is kind of interrogating Philip Seymour Hoffman. She's opening up that window to let that natural light in, and it seems to be like an interrogation kind of light. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to, just kind of, if you could talk about that scene in particular. Yeah,
I think that was tough. I mean, that was a tough location because it was a location, and it was like I guess it was on like the second floor as it would be here, and there was a balcony outside that we had the light off, and it was nearly winter, so there wasn't a lot of daylight, so the daylight changed, and it was a bit of a nightmare. But to get back more to answer your question, is the thing about I think a thing about actors, if you haven't got a performance, you haven't got a film. So it's all right creating the most beautiful piece in the world, but if you haven't got a performance, it means nothing. So I really am always conscious that I've got to give the actors a space and create an environment that they feel comfortable in to do their work. So it is a balance. Sometimes it's frustrating because there's things you want to do but you can't because you know you're going to distract or something. In that particular scene you're talking about, you know, we basically set up one lighting situation that would just work for a lot of different positions that they would go in the room. There wasn't really a lot of light in the room itself. We just actually put up huge bounces outside. And the bounce cut the daylight so that we didn't have the lighting change from the natural light, and and created a kind of soft enough kind of light in the room that we could pretty much follow the actors around and let them do what they wanted to do. I mean, that was interesting in the film, because I remember we didn't know the blocking of the scene, and we actually shot the first rehearsal in a wide shot, and then started developing what the scene was from seeing the wide shot. So I sometimes do that, you know. I mean, sometimes that's the right way to work because it's good for the actors, but it does make it tough. Then you've got to be quite quick in figuring how you want to cover the scene. And we work quite a lot with a small aerocrane jib arm. It's like a sectional jib arm. It's like 13 feet is its maximum, and then with a little remote power pod head. And it gives the actors a lot of, you know, a combination of that and the soft light gives the actors a lot of, and a great focus puller sitting right there. And that gives the actors a lot of freedom to, you know, do what they want to do. So yeah. So quite often you film the wide shot and then you'll go in and shoot other setups, and then you'll think, well, I need a specific cut here. I need a specific close up for this moment. You know, that was probably more how we shot Doubt. You know, as opposed to working with the Coen brothers, where it's like, when I first started working with them, it would be like, you know, a two people talking thing, and they would say, okay, well, we'll shoot over here, and you get 2 lines, and they cut, and they wouldn't do the rest of the scene. They said, we don't need that wide, so we'll move in now. You know what I mean? Whereas most directors will run the whole scene on that, just in case you might want it. But now they more likely do that. Now they run the scenes more. But when I first started with them, I guess it's the sort of budget thing, but they would cut after 2 lines. So, no, we don't need any more of the scene. The actor would go, what, really? It was funny.
It's sort of almost old school, isn't it? I mean,
it's very old school.
Like
I mean, like,
1950s.
you know, Fargo, for instance, we shot, I think it was 155,000 feet of film, wasn't it, Andy? Something like that, 170,000 feet of film.
Yeah.
And you think, well, the average Hollywood film now is like 1 million feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, those are the sort of guys you have to beg for a second take. You know what I mean? It's like
that way of operating off the jib arm with a power pod is something you do a bit of. I remember reading something about No Country for Old Men, especially where in the massacre site at the beginning that you're using you know, an arm, a short arm, like a 10-footer or something, just to be able to give you that sort of in out, up and down flexibility.
well, especially, I mean, not so much in that scene you mentioned, but especially in something like Doubt, where you're not exactly sure if the actor's going to stand a foot from the desk or 2 feet or 4 feet or whatever, just to be able to kind of just move your framing a little, adapt your framing to what they're doing a little bit. I find that even if you're not doing it in shot, it's very quick between takes to say, well, I like to be a bit lower here, so instead of actually having to adjust the tripod legs or anything, I just go like that, and you know, and Andy accommodates me, thankfully.
Do you use lights on boom arms as well? Is that a technique you use much? Or
No, I mean, probably once, but
right, yeah.
often use I'd use a reflector on a boom arm or something more lightly, but not lights. I don't do that. I mean, once I probably hung a China lantern on a boom pole.
I suppose that's the obvious thing.
I've done it with car stuff. I mean, I've done car stuff with a boom pole and lights on it, and done a big sort of whirlybird thing. Yeah, but I don't do that much really. I like to keep. I guess I like to keep lighting simple, and because I like operating, and I think the framing and composition is as important, if not more important, than lighting in a way. I think, you know.
Why's that?
I don't know really. I couldn't say. I guess it's because I come from documentaries, and I like, you know, I just love frames. I just love framing. You know, I think that's. So I think it's like lighting to be naturalistic, and it's just nice if you can light a set and almost forget about it. I mean, I don't say I don't change things. I do change from shot to shot a bit. I kind of like soften the face if I'm going in the close-up or something. I'm not saying I don't change lighting, but I like to light a set and then shoot. You know.
So does that mean, like when you're talking with the director before, or that you are working out the directions you wish to shoot, so that there's not a lot of turning around, a lot of changing of mind. Like if you light a particular way for a particular angle, for a particular composition, if you swing 180 or whatever, it all kind of falls apart. But so that's kind of laid out.
Yeah, you try and do that. It's again, it's like it's a balance, isn't it? You don't want to impose something on the director and the actors in terms of the way they're staging, but yes, you also kind of look at location and think, well, you have, when I do a scout, first see a location, I think, that's how I could like that. I've got something in my mind, but it's a balance, isn't it? You don't want to impose it, but if you, especially with like Joel and Ethan, they explain where I think the wide shot would be best served or something like that. They're quite, open to that.
Open to that,
yeah, absolutely. Most directors are when you explain it.
As we've been talking about framing and composition, you knew Conrad Hall and spent time with him, and
yeah, I was lucky enough to meet him actually when I was in I'd been in America like a couple of years, and I went to I shot Barton Fink, I think, and I'd been invited to the clubhouse, and I'm walking in as Conrad Hall was standing on the steps with, like my idols, Owen and Haskell and Gordon Willis, and I thought, fuck, shit. And I'm going, I'll go like this, and Connie went, Roger Deakins. Oh God, I could have fallen through the floor. That was quite something. So yeah, we kind of, I guess we were kind of friends for a while. Yeah.
So I can see echoes in your work and crossovers, especially the use of. We were talking about this earlier, a little bit of Shawshank Redemption, that the use of black in the jail cell, particularly, where characters are kind of lit and then everything falls away, and very careful compositions, and I'm not trying to join you together too much, but just echoes.
No, I love his work. I watch I always watch his work. Obviously now I kind of watch films sometimes just because I know who shot it, but it was a case of anything he shot, I'd look forward to the next film that he shot coming out. And I remember watching Fat City in Torquay one winter, and I was virtually the only person in the cinema, and I kind of watching this film, I'm thinking, it's unbelievable. There was maybe two or three other people in the cinema, they were asleep, it was winter and it was raining, so that's the only reason they were there. And I'm watching this film thinking, my God, why isn't this packed? Why aren't people watching this? This is the most amazing piece of work, I thought. And I just sort of so brave the kind of way he shot it. And it was funny talking to him about it later on, when I met him years later. It all seemed so effortless. He talked about it, but amazing piece of work, yeah.
Anybody else?
Hi, I just want to ask about Fargo. It seemed there was a lot of natural lighting in that movie, and I just want to know, did you have to manipulate the lighting a lot with the snow and so on, or did you just use what was available?
Yeah, I was pretty much... For the exteriors, I didn't really do much, actually. There was one interior scene that we lit, again, talking about practicals and choice of practicals. So, the art department, the set dresser had a whole load of practicals in the shop, and we were doing this one scene in I think it was a motel room or something, I can't remember, it was a bit of a fight scene, and she had this one practical that is, one of those period things with like 3 bulbs on it. So I thought, I took this, I said, that's great, I put 340 watt bulbs in it and stuck it in a corner of the room and shot the whole scene with that. And forever since, Joel has been ragging me about that. Every time I get a film light out, he says, what do you need that for? Remember Fargo? That was very funny. Sort of blew him away, really. But it was, that was very naturalistic, but sometimes naturalistic is like, naturalistic in the car place, the car dealership, was natural. It was like sort of, 10, 12 Ks outside the windows. Like very natural, isn't it, really?
There's natural in this film, natural in this.
Well, it's funny, Shawshank, I was at the ASC one time and I heard a comment about Shawshank and they said, yeah, it was beautifully shot, but but he didn't have to do any lighting, did he? There's not a shot in the film that's not lit. It's like I had 55 12Ks, and it weren't 18Ks then. We had 55 12Ks from every part of America to light the cell block, I mean, it was a huge amount of light. So this guy, I better mention his name because he's a very well-known cameraman, but he's a good friend, and he said, yeah, but he didn't need any lights, he shot natural light. Well, yeah, I wish I was that clever.
But you're also just speaking about lighting and things seeming kind of invisible. In No Country for Old Men, there's that scene where, a night scene where you lit the air so that you could see the truck, I'm just trying to think of the character.
Josh is.
Josh is down there. He's gone back to give water to the guy.
Yeah.
And he's been caught out.
Yeah.
And you look back at this ridge, and everything's in silhouette above there, and you're going, oh yeah, well that's just, at first glance, but of course, half the lighting in LA was behind that hill.
No, that was 9 12Ks.
9 12Ks.
12Ks, you might shooting straight up in the air towards the camera, like 45 degrees, so they were catching every bit of dust in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a really hard sequence. I was kind of like thinking, I really struggled over what to do with that. And then I realised, well, it could be first light of dawn. And then I went there, I think, one dawn, before dawn came up, I went to the location, and I thought, well, I get away with that, because dawn was a shame, it was coming up just to the left, and so it didn't really match. So, I mean, I had to light it because the length of the scene, but then there's one shot in it where it's the real dawn and it's slightly left of where I cheated the dawn, and I've always been really disturbed by that.
There's always shots like that you see in the movies, or your own work, I mean, and you look up and you go, oh.
Yeah, it really hurts me every time I watch it.
But you have a lot of inventive ways of lighting night, and solutions to, it's a conundrum. In Jesse James, you're in the middle of nowhere. The starlight, the execution of Ed. Have we got the right character? Ed.
Ed Miller.
Ed Miller, the execution of Miller, and you've got this front source coming onto both of them that they're riding towards.
Well, that was a very particular thing. I mean, that's like, you think of the night stuff in No Country and the difference between that and what was in that scene in Jesse James, but that was, Andrew had these references of this stills photographer, I forget his name now, and it was like these faces in inky blackness, and he wanted this feeling of these floating faces, because I was going like, okay, it's night, and Jesse's got a black suit on, he's riding a black horse, and it's completely open prairie, and okay, so what am I going to see apart from his face? But Andrew was good with that. He said, no, that's what we want. We want to just sense the horse and stuff. It's fine. I said, well, let's at least put some trees. Let's put some trees down the way they're riding, because otherwise they could be standing still. You won't know. So we put those little white trees, and that was it.
Well, it's an interesting thing you say about the trees, because I was watching the shot again and I thought, just before he shoots him and comes up behind him, and it almost looks like Ed's not moving at all. He's just floating. He is actually floating before his moment of death.
Yeah.
And the tree goes sort of...
part of that is kind of because the first series of shots he's on a real horse, and then for the close-up we had to know exactly where he was for the frame, so he's on a fake horse and he's doing the movement, and it's slightly different. so maybe that works, It was not intentional.
I know. But
well, other than the fact that if he were on a real horse, just his movement would have been too much for the close-up, and you needed to read his expression. So, I mean, that's partly why he was like that.
It works,
Yeah.
And you know what, just thinking of your focus puller, who I think you've been with for a long time as well.
Since Fargo,
Since Fargo, wow, okay. James, are you ever, it's almost a marriage, isn't it? No, well, it's a long time. But you've had a focus puller for almost, what, 15 years?
I guess, yeah.
But I was just thinking about that scene, how much stop you were using, you know, on Ed Miller to keep, you know, following the sharps, floating along in the night like that. It's very critical stuff.
Nightmare,
And,
really, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, because it's a long old space they were travelling. The scene is actually longer than's left in the cut, because originally the scene was in continuity with when Jesse gets to Ed Miller's house, and it just, that was in the script, it was just went on. And it was a longer ride than's left. Now it's just that kind of flashback to illustrate Jesse's telling of it, what happened. So it was quite, we had this, it was one scene we didn't shoot in Canada, we actually shot it in LA, in a field up in the hillside outside of LA. God, it was cold that night, it was an awful night. But it was a very long track that we put in this field, so to light it, you go, well, okay, you know, I couldn't really have a lot of light, we just didn't have the budget, so I think I had something like 20 10Ks, which might sound a lot, but it's not when you've got like between 300 and 500 feet or something, and you want to create a soft light. So I basically had a line of these 10Ks up on the hill, about another, I don't know, 150 feet back from the end of the kind of the set, as it were. Then we shoot wide open, yeah.
Right. Can you remember, Andy, what the stop was?
Wide open, Mandy, wasn't it? It was wide open. Oh yeah.
It's like, yeah. Okay.
As it, a lot of it is at night, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Would you like to introduce your team that are here today?
Well, it's Andy Harris and it's Josh Golis, who's at DIT.
Just before we finish, I was reminded that when I was at film school, Freddie Young came to visit. He was in Australia, and this is a long time ago, and he was asked what advice he had for young cinematographers, and he said, "Stay healthy." And I wondered whether you have any advice for young cinematographers.
I think that's pretty good advice, actually. Stay healthy is pretty good. My advice is always just find what makes sense to you when you do something. Don't try and copy me or anybody else. It's like everybody's got their own, sensibility, and it's to develop that. That's what's important.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, pleasure.